Maria came home, I'll never forget it. She came to the door and she says, "It's leukaemia." I just burst into tears. And this 7-year-old little precious boy, it was heartbreaking. I would weep every day. I would go into the bathroom and just weep. You know, you're trying to hold it together for the family. And I would often just cry out to God, "Please, don't let my little boy die." I'm a first-generation Greek Egyptian. Mum was born in Egypt, but from Greek heritage. I grew up in commission housing in Dufton, not knowing my father. You got to realise Greek Egyptian families are very conservative. So most of my uncles and aunties were arranged marriages. So his mum, immigrant to Australia, she's the black sheep. She's gorgeous, she's in Miss Victoria. Got stood down to second when they found out she was pregnant. It was a great shame to my family, and I heard this often when I was a kid. Your dad didn't want you. He tried to talk her into an abortion, and so you build this narrative that you're not wanted. But I wasn't meant to be. My mum married when I was 3 or 4, and he was my stepdad. I didn't know he was my stepdad. I've got a sister. She's blonde and blue eyes. I used to always say to my mum, "Why does Jamie not look like me?" And Mum would say, "Well, Jamie looks like Dad and you look like me." And I found out that we have different dads. And when I was 9, he left in the middle of the night. My mum and my sister were inconsolable. I just remember I had to look after my mum and my sister, and she rang a girlfriend. I remember she came around and she had this story of Jesus, and at the back of it, it had this prayer that you read. I just remember my mum glowing. It was like a supernatural moment. Jesus is just coming into our life, and my sister and I both read the prayer. It was kind of our family becoming part of the family of God. Like, we really did give our life to Jesus. And what was great about it was this local church became our family. So we went into Sunday school and youth group and got discipled and mentored by the youth pastor. So this kind of encounter with God, and then followed up by a local church. Despite living in poor housing, my stepdad was abusive, physically abusive to my mum, coming home and the whole house being smashed up, my mum's arm broken. I felt very aware of God's presence as a little boy. It became an intimate relationship with God. I mean, I grew up in housing commission, so across the road, I remember Matt was dealt drugs, and Adam, one of my best friends, went to jail. But yet I always felt like God's hand was kind of on me and protecting me. Yes, I've had 3 dads. The third one came into my life at 15 and left at 18. I took on his name and he really loved me like a son. But I definitely had this gap. I mean, I didn't know how to mow a lawn. I didn't know how to fix a bike. I remember my son Lachlan, when he was born, they cut her open and they pulled this baby out. And they said, "It's a boy." And I remember I just wept. We didn't have digital cameras then. And I had my camera on me. My wife says the first hour I took like 1,000 photos, because every time I felt love, I kept taking a photo. But I was overwhelmed with love to this chance to be a father when I had not really experienced much of fathers. And God's very gracious in giving us father figures. You know, I look at Steve Swain, who was my youth pastor from a kid. He loved and loves me unconditionally. Knows all my flaws and all my strengths, and that's been a real gift to me. I feel like a second chance for me to love on these young men, young boys, my sons. Mum was hard work. I remember, like, as a teenager, one time she was picking me up from the train, and a girl in my class needed a lift, and I was like, "Mum will give us a lift." And I said, "Hey Mum, do you mind giving a lift?" "Mum won't mind." And she's like, "I do mind." If you heard her story, I mean, she was in an orphanage in Egypt. She'd had terrible trauma in her life. So I remember as a little kid, she was incredibly violent. If I didn't make the bed, she would ring up the police to try and get me arrested. She called Steve Swain and told him to come around and discipline me. And I remember him just winking at me. And he would often let me come and stay at his house, him and Sonia. It was very hard as a kid. She struggled with schizophrenia most of her life. Most of my childhood, she was in and out of hospital, having multiple dads. And I remember I just wanted to get out of there. So by 17, I did. I carried a lot of unforgiveness towards her for some of the physical abuse. I just said to God, I just am so angry with her. I can only describe it as a moment with Jesus, which he gave me the grace to say, I love you, and genuinely mean it. A lot of forgiveness, a lot of healing, a lot of counseling. I forgave her, and at the same time, God just gave me this love for her. And I have this very deep relationship with her now. You know, she's 70 now. I want her to have some joy in her life. So Mother's Day, birthdays, for her to experience joy as a family without violence or without conflict. Despite some of her limitations, she taught us to love God and love people really generously. I knew I would do something for God. I felt that calling since I was a little kid. I love people, and I think the local church is about people. So for me, I wanted to be a pastor at 18. I wanted to help other pastors and see churches planted and started. In 2009, my wife and the boys, they were 5, 7 and 9, we moved to Chicago to see an organisation called Forge start and to help this church in Chicago. It was a big move to take these little boys to raise support. And 4 weeks after we got there, my son was diagnosed with leukaemia, my middle boy, Carter, who was 7. In fact, they took a family photo of us the night before, and somebody said, your son looks very pale. And we hadn't really noticed, because we just thought they were cold. Do you know how cold Chicago is? I'm built like a polar bear, and I thought it was cold. So I'll never forget Maria going to the doctor, getting the blood test, coming home, and they said, get your son to the hospital, he's got leukemia. I remember just thinking, what is going on? 4 years of treatment. I'd take my hat off to my wife. I mean, I had a new job. She had to go down and sit with him. It was weekly, and then it went monthly, the chemo. His hair fell out twice, excruciating needles. His kidney shut down, really hard. And now he's 11, he's gone through 4 years of chemo. We're sitting as a family with the 3 boys, and Maria and I. And he looks at the boys and he says, I'm so glad it was me that went through this and not you. So we're all just sobbing. How could this 11-year-old articulate this incredible love for his brothers? I have tremendous respect for him because he was remarkably brave. At the end of 4 years, we had a big celebration. Her whole family came over. We celebrated him being cancer-free. Remember, we burnt the last tablets, and then a month later, I was diagnosed with leukemia. We both had leukemia, different strains. I mean, I had just written a book. I was starting to speak around America. I couldn't work. It was 9 months of chemo. I had an AML, which is treated with arsenic. It's every day. And in the midst of my misery, Jesus really ministered to me. God was with us in the pain. I just had to trust God. And I remember crying out to him, writing in my journal, I don't want to leave my wife a widow. I don't want to leave my sons fatherless. Lord, that you would just come and heal me. And after 9 months, I was declared cancer-free. And I would say too, though, that sickness and finances break up marriages. And I think my wife and I, we pushed together. We clung to Jesus. I never blamed God for Carter getting sick or me being sick. We live in a broken world. It was awful, but it was also kind of this beautiful, redemptive story of God's grace. We got to minister all over America to people whose loved ones were sick or dying. And I think it really gave me a perspective about what's important in life. Writing books are not the most important. Speaking is not the most important. But your faith and your family are the most important. I decided everything was about being obedient to Jesus. God has been incredibly gracious that Carter and I both have had healing. It was a wonderful time in America. I'm so grateful for the time, but I really love being back here with my family. And I ended up getting a job part with the Baptist Union of Victoria and partly with Sea Life, and I love being a pastor. I love loving people. I have an amazing team. I am determined to live my life so that every person can experience the grace and love and forgiveness of God. My biological father didn't want me, God wanted me. I wasn't an accident. In Psalms where it says, I knitted you together in your mother's womb, that meant a lot to me. I think every person deserves to be seen and heard. And I think that's the heart of God. I love that God saw me. Now I know there's moments of silence and there's moments of distance, but often that's about us moving away or not hearing. I don't think God ever changes. I'm his son, and he is a real father to me. I'm wrapped in his grace and forgiveness. I do think sometimes you can believe the lies. I think there's two narratives. Will I listen to the world that says, you don't come from the right pedigree, you don't have the right family, things are spoken over us, you're not good enough, you weren't meant to be. It's easy for the other narrative to seep in through the world, through social media, through our own doubts. That I choose every day to get up as a son of the King, to live into I'm a son of God, to be the best husband and father I can be.